Welcome to the Stop Ruining My Childhood podcast.
A sometimes nostalgic, sometimes cynical look back at pop culture.
Join us as we revisit movies, cartoons, and live-action TV of the 80s and 90s and ask the question,
does this hold up, or did I just ruin my childhood?
My name is Megan.
And I'm Steve.
Today, after 2 years of podcasting, 6 years of marriage, a year of engagement before that, a year of dating before that, we finally have gotten Steve to watch Friends.
Yes, for this week, we watched the show Friends from the 90s and early 2000s.
Yeah, and the reason that we picked Friends is because it's November, and we wanted to do some Thanksgiving-themed episodes. And when you look at movies and TV, there aren't a whole lot of, Thanksgiving movies. Exactly.
Yeah. We found
not
some
as
and
much
we
as
used
Christmas.
some, but it's not like Christmas. No, it's true.
So we did this last year too. We picked a TV show that we wanted to check out, and we watched the Thanksgiving episodes. We had last year was Small Wonder.
Yep.
I don't want to ruin Friends review, but it will not be rated by us as badly as Small Wonder. Horrible show, but really good episode.
You don't know that yet. We're not at the end of.
I guess I could always be surprised. So if you haven't been with us before, we're going to do Steve's favorite segment first.
The non-sponsored snack review.
Then we'll talk about some Thanksgiving memories. We'll get into a summary of the show, and then we'll do some history and fun facts. We'll take a break where today's break is going to feature our snack. So
Excellent.
That should be fun.
It's going to be an old commercial.
A little commercial, vintage commercial in there for our break. And then we'll get into our memories of the show and our full review and recap of the 2 episodes we picked for today.
Excellent.
So that's our game plan.
Our non-sponsored snack today is Kit Kats.
Kit Kats. Steve, for people who have never had a Kit Kat before, describe this candy.
Kit Kats are wafers that have been pressed into multiple layer of wafer that's been pressed into 4 little bars and then covered in chocolate.
And they have like a frosting in between them?
Yeah, I think they have like a frosting or
kind of like a very thin,
or like chocolate in between the wafers as well.
And Kit Kats are not gluten-free, but they have a gluten-free version from Char called Twin Bar. And I'm very excited because they almost never have these in the grocery store, and they had them today. Now, I will tell you, Steve, how much did your Kit Kat cost? Like maybe $1?
Yeah.
This cost me $3.49.
Wow. For
a bar that is smaller than your Kit Kat. Having said that, it is delightful.
Okay.
My favorite candy bar of all time. I love it so much.
Yeah, it's good. So tell us a little bit about Kit Kat.
Yeah, so the Kit Kat is kind of interesting. I did not realize until I was doing research for this show. This is actually created by Rowntree, which is a London-based company. So it started in 1935, which is crazy because I full-on bought this thinking that we'd talk about like Skittles came out in the 80s. I thought that Kit Kat came out around that time.
So when we eat them, should we be like, toodaloo, pass the tea? And then I put my little finger up.
No, and I apologize to our listeners in the UK. We have a lot of them, actually. I'm so sorry. These were originally not called...
Impression is the highest form of flattery.
Is it? I don't know about that. So the name Kit Kat came from the Kit Kat Club, which was named after Christopher Catling, who used to hold a literary and political club in his pie shop in London in the 17th century.
That sounds posh.
I don't know.
I don't really know what posh means. I'm just trying to use it.
Yeah, you're using it the right way. Actually not the original name of it, but that's eventually what it became called. And it was renamed that by 1937, so it was pretty early on. The red and silver wrapper of Kit Kat were always the colors. So the packaging hasn't changed, except in 1942, Can you guess why, Steve? They changed it to blue.
In 42?
Yep. Because it was World War II. And milk wasn't as readily available or as fresh. And they wanted to let people know, listen, this isn't the same Kit Kat you normally get. It'll be a little bit less fresh, but that's for the war effort.
Gotcha. Okay.
That's kind of interesting. All right. So 1949, when increased availability of milk, a couple years after the war and after that recovery, they went back to the red logo. 1950s, they had an international expansion of the brand. They went into Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, Rhodesia, and Canada, places basically where Rowntree had already established a presence. In the U.S., it's done by Hershey. It's distributed by Hershey.
Got it.
Same formula and stuff. And the classic line, have a break, have a Kit Kat, was by an advertising agency, and they first launched that in 1958 with 4 TV commercials and a press campaign. So it was like a big push.
Big push.
They went international, and then they also had a TV campaign, which would have been really early for TV campaigns.
Yeah.
Because most TV at that time was sponsored by local small businesses. And then, and I guess this is why I probably think this, because the Give Me a Break song that we all know and love and will be part of our little break today, the Give Me a Break song, Break Me Off a Piece of That Kit Kat Bar, was done in 1988.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. And that's the song that's been used until today.
Okay.
So it's been pretty still a popular candy, and it is from the time of my grandma would have been, I don't know, 10 when this came out.
Okay.
So I just find it interesting that it's been around for so long, and it's delightful. How did you like yours?
It was good. Yeah. I liked it. Do you have any memories of Kit Kats?
I don't really, except that you're supposed to share it. And much like Joey Tribbiani and Friends, Megan doesn't like sharing desserts.
Okay.
But it's meant for those bars to actually break apart so that you can share it with somebody else.
Yeah.
But this is the kind of candy, we had a 7-Eleven near us, and I would ride my bike over to the 7-Eleven, and this is the kind of thing I would get. Okay. Yeah, I just it's nice. It's really nice to be able to have a gluten-free version of it, because I probably haven't had anything like this in, I don't know, 8 years, maybe. I maybe 10. It's really hard to find the gluten-free version. And like I said, when I go in, I'm like, oh, I could buy a regular candy bar that, is just like a Hershey bar or something for $1. Or I could spend $3.50 on a fake Kit Kat bar, So I haven't really purchased it for myself. So it's nice to have this. It really, for me, it is nostalgic because I don't have it all the time,
Break me off a piece of that Score Twin bar. That's
Fancy Feast. Nailed it. That's an office joke. Yeah, so we will rate out of turkeys today. Oh, I can't split a live thing. We'll share that with Alf. We'll rate on pumpkin pies. How about that?
Okay.
So, if you haven't been with us before, we do 1 out of 5 somethings for the snack and 1 out of 10 for the TV show or movie. And this is, for me, very obviously 5 out of 5 pumpkin pies. How about you?
I don't know. I'm going to say that it's not something that I go and get specifically. I like it. I like it's chocolate. It's wafered. I'm not a huge fan of wafer stuff necessarily.
Really?
Not really.
A little crunch to it.
It's good, but if I want crunch, I'm going to have Nestle Crunch.
Okay.
Right. But it's not bad either. I would give it a 4.
Okay.
If it was a 5, that's something I'm craving that. I'm going to go buy it specifically. And I don't never really done that with Kit Kat bars.
You guys, as we're sitting here, Steve has broken off 2 of the 4 pieces of his Kit Kat, and it is driving me crazy. I could do this.
I'm saving that for later.
I know it. I hate it. I hate it so much. Well, probably also because, like I said, mine was smaller. But the fact that you're just like letting it sit there and I can't eat it. It's not like I can share it with you because I can't eat
Even
it.
if you could, you can't because that's mine.
Yeah. That's marriage is to become one. So it's fine. So.
Yeah. 4.5
pumpkin pies.
Pumpkin pies. I almost said turkeys.
Yeah. 4.5 pumpkin pies. That's not too bad for our snack. So, Steve, we're talking about food before we get into Friends. What is your favorite Thanksgiving delight?
Cranberry sauce.
Really?
Yeah.
Out of everything?
Everybody's is cranberry sauce.
It's not my well, I eat like turkey with cranberry sauce like on a Tuesday just because I feel like it. I'm a big fan of cranberry sauce. Mine is okay. My family, my mom has a pie crust recipe that's from her great grandmother, and we have a family cookbook that we put together that's pretty legit. It's got like 300 or 400 recipes in there. But this pie crust recipe is just like perfect. It's nice and flaky. It's hard to do with gluten-free flour, but I've kind of figured it out. And she makes this great pumpkin pie. But what we've found is that we like it better cold the next day. So my mom will make it like Wednesday because pumpkin pie hot, it's like eating squash,
right?
I guess. So my mom will make it Wednesday and then she'll put it in the fridge and it'll cool. And then you can have second day pumpkin pie on Thursday.
Okay. You don't have a family tradition of eating hot squash pie?
No. No, I mean, it's like, I don't know. There's just something, believe me, we went through this when I was a kid. My brother and I would like not eat the pie on Thanksgiving. Like, well, we'd have like apple and sometimes I make a lemon meringue that's really good.
Yeah.
But we would always like the pumpkin pie we like attack on Friday. That's the pumpkin pie day. So then my mom was like, what if I just make it the day before? And we were like, yeah, that works.
We would do, well, I guess a lot of times for Thanksgiving, my grandmother would always make pies, and she made them like the day before because she would make like 3 or 4 pies, right? And so she would make them all the day before purposely because then, we'd start cooking, doing Thanksgiving like 1 o'clock, and she wouldn't have to start early in the morning. But yeah, that was, and we would always have pumpkin because that was one of my brother's favorites. My other brother's favorite was apple, so we always had apple. And then for like 10 or 11 years, we had strawberry rhubarb, which was a weird pie choice to have.
It's like a summer pie.
It's a summer pie. Yeah. Not everyone likes it. And then, like I said, after about 12 years of this, we were eating them one day, and we had somebody was at Thanksgiving who hadn't been there before. I don't know if it was a new family, like someone who married into the family or somebody like that. And they said, oh, strawberry rhubarb, you have that too. And they said, that's interesting. And my grandmother said, yeah. She goes, we have pumpkin pie because it's Bill's favorite, and we have apple because it's Kevin's favorite, and we have strawberry rhubarb because it's Steven's favorite. And I looked and I go, no, it's not. Apparently, for over a decade, this poor woman thought that was my pie, and so she made it every year for me. If
my grandmother had said that, I would not have said anything. I would have just been like, sure is,
I
Grandma.
looked shocked. I'm like, what are you talking about? It's not, like, I would eat it because it's okay, but it's not my favorite pie.
Steve's favorite pie is pecan pie.
Yeah, which I now get from my grandmother every year.
Right, and I'm glad she makes it, because pecan pie is a pain to make. It is really... It's not a fun pie to make, I don't think. I don't feel like anyway. But I will say, too, I was going to say the reason my mom did the pies is because we have a huge family. And so it was always potluck. So we wouldn't have we needed to do them the day before because we weren't cooking anything else in our oven.
Right.
Like, we brought the pies. My mom would make pumpkin and apple. And like I said, I would a lot of times make a lemon meringue. And then later I made the apple, too. And sometimes I make a pumpkin cheesecake. And then other people would bring other things. And I think, too, it's interesting because a lot of people are like, oh, the Thanksgiving turkey. I don't really need that turkey. There's so many other sides on Thanksgiving. But I saw this great thing of British kids eating Thanksgiving food for the first time.
Yeah.
They were the most perplexed about the sweet potato casserole.
Okay.
Because if you're listening and you are one of our UK listeners, and we also have people listening in like Japan, Iran, like a number of different places, right? Australia. Sweet potato casserole is mashed sweet potatoes, sometimes whipped, with marshmallows on top. Sometimes like granola as well, but usually just sweet potatoes and marshmallows. And some people put marshmallows in the like tiny ones.
Yeah. The
kind you get on top of hot cocoa. And they also put them on top. I'm not a big fan of that either, because I feel like I'm going to eat pie later.
Right.
I'm not going to. And I like marshmallows and I like sweet potatoes. But
yeah, my family never made that.
Yeah. But I know you are also a big fan of the other Thanksgiving favorite, the green bean casserole.
Yeah, I am, because my family never made it. But I do like it. I've had it once or twice at other places, other people's houses, and I liked it. And then when we got married, your family makes it, and I was like, ooh, green bean casserole.
Yeah. So
fancy.
Here's the thing.
It's posh.
For years then, Steve did not get his favorite side, nor his favorite pie.
I didn't get my favorite pie till I was in my teens.
I just think that's hilarious. And now it's okay. And now we have double Thanksgiving because we don't rotate. We go to both.
We do.
And then we feel sick for about a week afterwards.
Yeah, we do a Thursday and a Friday Thanksgiving.
But Friends is the show we're talking about today. And they were always, obviously, it's a very popular show. A lot of times we try to mix it up. Mm-hmm. We try to do things that are a little less well-known and then things that are really, like, remembered.
Right.
Like, we did Darkwing Duck last time. It was on for 2 seasons, maybe 3. A lot of people don't remember it, but a lot of people do remember it.
Watch your mouth.
A lot of people don't really remember it that much because you have to be at the right age at the right time. But Friends was on for 10 years. But for people who haven't seen it or haven't seen it in a long time, tell us about it.
I normally do the summary, but why don't you do the summary? Because this is one of the shows you've been waiting forever about. So give us a brief summary of what Friends is.
So the whole concept behind Friends, and this, I guess, ties in a little bit with some of the fun facts I'll present later. Mm-hmm. The whole concept is that there's a certain time in your life where your friends are your family. And I found that to be true for me in my life, that you are out of the house and on your own, usually during college or just after. And it's before you get married and have kids or really establish your career. And you're kind of finding yourself and maybe you're away from home, and the friends that you gather into your life kind of become like your family, your support system, that kind of thing. And so that was kind of an unusual idea at the time because most sitcoms are family-based or workplace-based, like Mary Tyler Moore Show, Cheer, or they're based around one person, like a lot of comedians had their own shows, like Seinfeld, right? But even they're a little bit older. They're kind of people established in their careers. So here we have 6 friends, Ross and Monica. Monica is a chef and kind of uptight, and her brother is Ross. He's a paleontologist and a college professor later on. Then we have their friend Phoebe, who Monica was roommates with for a time, and she's kind of like a hippie, like free spirit. We have the people who live across the hall are Chandler, who used to be Ross's college roommate, and the person who initially started out just renting the apartment with him, because in New York, a lot of times that's what you have to do. Chandler has an office job, and then his best friend, Joey, who's his roommate, and Joey is a struggling actor. So when you start the show in season 1, none of them really, like Ross has a career at a museum, but for the most part, these are people kind of just starting off in their careers. Rachel is getting out of a relationship, and she's a waitress at a coffee shop. Monica's a chef, but like she's a line cook. She's not like the sous chef or the head chef yet. Chandler has just kind of a drone off his job, that kind of thing. So we follow them through 10 years, and eventually they come to a point at the end of the show where they're moving out of that stage of life that you're in your 20s, and now they're in their early and mid-30s, and they're starting their own families and kind of moving on with their careers, and they'll probably be in touch, but they're not going to see each other every day, all day.
Right.
Right? So that's the show.
Okay. Well, you did a good job, because I probably wouldn't have done it that well.
Okay. Steve would be like, here's the summary of the show. It's a show that girls like, that was super popular.
It's about some friends, hence the name.
They hang out. They're always in his coffee shop. Mm-hmm. So I find that the how this came to be really interesting. And Marta Kauffman and David Crane, who were the writers and creators of the show, they kind of expressed it in this phrase, like lightning in a bottle, that they had a really hard time casting it, which we'll talk about in a second. But that once they cast it, they put all 6 of these people together, and it was like electric, is how they said. That from the first episode, we'll get into this, I guess, more with reception later, but I remember that this show was not a sleeper hit, right? It did really well right away.
Right.
And like we talked about Cheers debuted at like number 98 out of 100 shows. Right. And then eventually it worked its way up to number 1. So how did they come to be cast? Well, we will start with David Schwimmer. He had been a person who tried out for a failed pilot that they had written.
Okay.
And David Schwimmer, they wanted right away. He was a more serious actor, or like a more established actor, I guess. He had a bad experience in Hollywood right before this. And he had started his own theater company in Chicago, which I guess he still runs.
Oh, okay.
That's kind of neat. So basically his agent was like, you really need to look at this script. And he was like, no.
He wasn't really interested.
No, they really, really wanted him. So they contacted him and they were like, we don't even need you to audition. We already saw you audition for the other pilot. We had you, in that other pilot. We know you can act. We don't need your audition. So they kind of like talked him into it. Then we have Matthew Perry and also Jennifer Aniston. Matthew Perry plays Chandler. Jennifer Aniston plays Rachel. They were both doing other shows.
Okay, now because Jennifer Aniston hadn't done much.
Well, yeah, she had done, we should watch this sometime if we can find it, the TV version of Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Okay.
She played the sister.
She played Jennifer Grey's character.
Yeah, Jennifer Grey's character. So she's in this pilot called Muddling Through, where it's like a family kind of sitcom, and it's on CBS.
Okay.
So the head of the network realizes, hey, this show, Friends, could be big. They really want Jennifer Aniston. He thought that she had talent. Mm-hmm. So he told everybody at NBC, kill that show.
Okay.
And so it was on from July to September in 1994. He puts on all the best shows that they have at the time.
Against it.
The top rated shows they put against it to make it basically die. And it goes off the air early and doesn't even bother.
Is that why? Because I know she was the last to be cast out of the 6.
Yes.
So is that part of the reason? Because they were waiting for her to get out of that?
Yep. And Matthew Perry was supposed to be doing this show, LAX, and then like numbers after it, about like an airport. Okay. And that show basically just didn't go anywhere. It was like a failed pilot, so it worked out for him. But they had them cast, and it's this thing contractually where it's like second choice. So they had to have backup people for both of them.
Right.
Then we come to Lisa Kudrow, who's already on an NBC show, Mad About You.
Who was she on Mad About You?
She was a recurring part where she was the waitress in the cafe that they always went to.
Oh, okay.
So it's kind of like Friends had Gunther in the coffee shop, right? So she said, look, I've already tried a number of failed shows. So I really want to do this show, but you got to protect Matt about you, because if this doesn't work out, I need to still be able to go back there.
Yeah.
But since it was still on their network, they allowed her to do it. Later on, they write it into this show that she's got a twin sister, Ursula, who's a waitress at that cafe.
Okay.
So basically the two shows like exist in the same universe kind of thing. So I thought that was kind of neat. Courtney Cox, have you seen the show that she was on before this? She had a recurring role. Pretty famous show. She played the girlfriend and then fiance of Alex P. Keaton.
Oh, she was in Family Ties.
Yeah.
I did not remember that, but it's been a long time since I saw Family Ties.
But Family Ties had gone off the air, so she's in the finale of Family Ties.
Okay.
And then she does a show with Bronson Pinchot, who is Valky from Perfect Strangers.
Yep.
And she just played the wife, and it wasn't a good show, and it was like it either failed or didn't last very long.
Okay.
And she was looking around for like something where she wouldn't have to just be like the wife character who just listens while her husband says funny things.
Right. She wanted more of a lead role, or at least an ensemble role.
Yeah. So she was offered the part of Rachel, and she was like, I actually think I'd be a better fit for Monica. And eventually kind of talked them into letting her have that part. And then, of course, later they found Jennifer Aniston, which is fun. And then Matt LeBlanc, I guess, didn't have any of those issues. But again, a lot of these people are all like struggling actors where they've done a number of things that just haven't taken off, right? And so you have, for the most part, kind of like unknowns, right?
Yeah.
And they had some other people they were considering for stuff. I don't know if you'll know this name, but like Nancy McKeon, who had been in Facts of Life.
Right.
And they were basically like, no, we want this to be a true ensemble show.
Yeah.
The network wanted David Schwimmer to kind of be the lead because they hadn't done any shows that were like actual ensembles.
Right. They still had one or two leads and then other people.
So the first year he got paid a little more.
Okay.
And then the second and third year, they went back to renegotiate their contract. They wanted to pay him more. He said no. He goes to the rest of the cast and he's like, look, we're an ensemble. One of us isn't here. It doesn't work. So they basically had like collective bargaining power.
They would all make the same.
They all make the same. And eventually, I mean, toward the end of the show, they didn't want to come back, like, I think for seasons 9 or 10. And the network negotiated with them for like $1 million each per episode.
Whoa.
And at that point, TV shows now is thinking about this because we're still watching Lois and Clark.
Yes.
TV shows then were all like 22 to 24 episodes a season.
Yeah.
Now you get more of the British style where there's like 8 to 10.
Right, because now they're streaming, so they do the smaller ones. Yeah.
But you're talking about like basically for TV actors, 22 million per season.
Yeah.
Times 6.
Yep. So
think about, too, how much the network was making.
Right.
Having said that, I think they also banked on the fact that, I think they knew what they had. They knew they had something that would be pretty popular, right? The other thing that they did, too, is that Courtney Cox had done a really, just like a one-episode guest spot on Seinfeld. And while they were in rehearsals, she went to the cast and she was like, look, most comedy shows work where people are like, I want that funny line. I want that funny line. They can get really competitive, right? She goes, I noticed when I was on Seinfeld that they give each other notes all the time. And they'll even say like, hey, I think it'd be funnier if you said it like this. Or, hey, I have this funny line, but I think it would work better for this other person. She goes, so I'm just saying, I don't know for the rest of you, but you guys can give me notes anytime.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, there's this oral history where people kind of all agreed, like, that changed the tone of the show.
Okay.
That they realized they're in this together.
They weren't competing against one another.
No, and instead they're kind of like helping each other and building each other up. Because again, they're pretty much all unknown, struggling actors who have done little bits of stuff here and there.
Yeah.
Right? So I thought that was kind of, like an interesting point. The other thing they did to bond is right before the show, like, fully, like, taped, they went to Las Vegas together as a group.
It was like a little team building exercise.
Yeah, kind of team building, and also, I guess Kauffman and Crane, as they're known, the production writers, they were like, enjoy this because you're never going to be able to do anything like this together again because you're going to be on NBC.
Yeah, people are going to know who you are.
Nights at 8:00.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah, it's interesting because you mentioned that Jennifer Aniston, you mentioned that they were not sure exactly if they were going to get her. She was in another show, as well as the fact that, she had done some other stuff. And so during the actual promotional photography for the first season of Friends, she's not in 80% of it.
Oh, interesting.
She was there, but they would take shots of the rest of the group without her in case she didn't last or in case she ended up not being in the show. Can you imagine? They're like, okay, all right, Jennifer, why don't you stand over there again? And they're like taking shots of the group.
That's so sad. And especially when they're trying to do team building and bonding and all that. Yeah, but I think that NBC kind of at least knew a little bit of what they have because basically what happened is that in the 80s, they had Cheers, Hill Street Blues, The Cosby Show, St. Elsewhere, Golden Girls, LA Law. And then they had some shows that kind of went into the 90s, like Seinfeld, Mad About You, Frasier. But the, block that they had going on, especially with Cheers, that had faded a little bit.
Okay.
And so by the time we come 1994, they're in second place behind ABC.
Oh, okay.
So they really were looking for something. And this idea of having a show about younger people to kind of get a younger audience, we talked a little bit the other day that Fox had come out and they had things like Beverly Hills and Melrose Place and like that.
They had The Simpsons.
And they had The Simpsons, yeah. And so they were one of the network execs was like, yeah, I was thinking about young adults starting out in New York, LA, Dallas, Philly, San Francisco, Portland, but they're all facing the same difficulties. It's expensive to live there, but it's also an emotional journey, right? And so he was thinking maybe drama, and then they came up with this idea and they pitched him this show that was initially called 6 of 1, which sounds like Star Trek 7 of 9.
It does a little bit.
And then they had it be these friends of mine. They tossed around a number of different names. But they had this show in 94 and also premiering at the same time was ER.
Wow, so they really had two big hits on their hands.
Yeah, so basically they put Friends at 8:00. They had some other shows kind of rotate, and then ER, I think, was at 10.
The first season of Friends, the first half of the season, they were at 8:30.
Oh.
And the second half of the season, they were at 9:30.
Oh.
They moved them around a little bit the first season. Then then the seasons 2 through 10, they were always 8:00.
That happens sometimes, and sometimes that makes it hard for a show to get its legs. There was a show that I liked that they moved to Sunday.
Right. Well,
just kill it.
Sometimes you move a show because it's not doing well or something like that. But it could have also been here that if they knew that they had a good show, they might have been moving it around to see what it competed against best.
Right.
If, they're trying to take it back from ABC.
Yeah.
They might have been trying to put it against other ABC
Yeah,
shows.
you're right. They might have had a specific ABC show that they were trying to kind of get off the air. And then my last fun fact, and then we can pause for a Kit Kat commercial.
Okay.
My last fun fact has to do with the very famous opening scene. And the opening scene is them in the fountain with the Rembrandts, I'll Be There For You. Well, a couple things about this. First, apparently that destroyed that band because that song was not really their typical tone.
Yeah. And then that's all everybody wanted.
That's all anybody wanted. But also, part of the band was we should do more songs like this. And the other part of the band was no, that's not the kind of music we make.
Right.
And so it didn't help that. I mean, they probably get residuals, but...
Well, I'm sure.
Yeah. And at this point, I don't know, maybe 3-cent checks or something. But the other thing is that this was pretty controversial, and the cast hated it because they were playing in a phone.
They're cold and wet for like 4 hours probably as they're shooting this.
And you're like 25 years old.
Right.
Like, you feel dumb playing in a fountain. But the network felt like it was too insular, and it made them look like a group of people who like hanging out together, but that people watching wouldn't feel like they belong with them.
Okay.
So what they decided to do was take clips from the show, and then they ended up doing it each season.
In between the
fountain to make you then feel like, oh, you're being brought into their world. And that they're friends together, but they're also kind of like your friends, right?
Okay.
Like you're part of the group and you're being brought into the adventures. So I thought that was kind of an interesting way to go, because I do think that that's one of the reasons that this has been such a popular show and has resonated for people, that it reflects that time in your life that can only happen once in your 20s when your friends are kind of your family and you're just kind of starting out and figuring out like what your adult life is going to look like.
Right.
And also that it brought you into this group of friends and kind of made you feel like you belong with them. So,
yeah.
All right. So we're going to take our break here. And when we come back in just a couple seconds, we will get into our memories or lack thereof, I guess.
Yeah.
And then we'll get into our full review and recap.
Would you say we're going to give them a break?
I would say we're going to give you guys a break. Stay tuned.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Give me a break. Give me a break. Break me off a piece of that Kit Kat bar. Give me a break. Give me a break. Break me off a piece of that Kit Kat bar.
You can keep it to yourself, but it wouldn't be fair, 'cause that chocolate crispy taste is loved
everywhere. So give me a break. Give me a break. Break me off a piece of that Kit Kat bar.
All right, we're back. I'm Megan.
And I'm Steve.
Steve, what are your memories of Friends?
That's a good question.
That is a deep sigh.
I did not watch Friends in prime time. I probably saw Friends more in reruns and syndication.
Okay.
And so I've probably seen a number of episodes. I'm aware of the overall storyline, kind of, who the characters are. It just never really clicked with me. It was not, but again, a lot of people have commented it's an ensemble cast. It's similar in a lot of ways to Seinfeld. And Seinfeld never caught I never really went with Seinfeld. It was not one of my favorite shows.
Yeah. I find that interesting because Seinfeld, to me, Seinfeld is a lot of humor, but not a lot of heart. And I feel like they tried to put a lot of heart into Friends more, and almost in a lot of ways cared about that more than the humor. But do you think it is because the show is kind of like a lot of girls liked it? Because I find that with a lot of guys with this show, that they don't like it because, like, oh, when I was in school, that's all the girls talked about, Friends, like that.
I mean, partially. Also, I never watched a lot of sitcoms.
Okay.
Right? I like more drama. I like sci-fi. I like fantasy. I like other things. So it's just, there's a few, there was some sitcoms I remember watching with my family or things like that, but Friends just wasn't one of them. And
interesting.
Yeah.
It's, for me, this is one of my top shows of all time. And I think it's because for a while now, I feel like this is a controversial statement. For a while, I did not have many close friends. I'll put it that way, because I said I didn't have any friends.
This is a reoccurring theme.
Yeah, it's a reoccurring theme. But this is a show that was very popular in my high school, and kind of everybody talked about it. So it was very easy then to, I actually did like it.
Yeah.
There were a number of shows that I watched because people watched them that I really didn't care for. But this is, I really like shows that mix humor with heart. And I don't like sitcoms that are formulaic. Like, will we ever watch The Nanny for this podcast? That's a tough one.
Okay.
If you really wanted it, and we maybe had viewers write in, I would maybe deal with it, but it would be difficult for me to watch.
Okay.
Because that is like this thing where it's 8 seconds is kind of the rule.
Right.
And the 8 seconds is set up, pause, punchline, pause, set up, pause, punchline, pause. And they try to do like a joke every 8 seconds, but most of those jokes are not funny. And so there are a number of sitcoms that are like that. Everybody Loves Raymond, another one, a lot of family based, or comedian kind of led are hard for me to watch. But yeah, I had like a t-shirt. I had,
you had a Friends t-shirt?
I had 2 Friends t-shirts. Oh, I had a teal one and a pink one. I had a poster. I have right now behind you, in the cabinet, all 10 seasons on DVD.
Okay.
And I've watched them like with director's commentary.
Oh boy.
Multiple times. Yeah. So this is, it was a big cultural thing. And by the time it went from 94 to 2004. But even after that, it just kind of lived on in streaming. And even like when I went through the time in my life, I lived in North Carolina. My parents were still in New York. So my friends were my family down there.
Yep. And
we still watched this show. And then we got into How I Met Your Mother, which is a very similar ensemble cast, friends are your family type of trope, right? And that kind of thing. So
now the funny part about that is I watched How I Met Your Mother religiously.
Fascinating.
I watched it. I did not miss an episode. I watched it in prime when it was on.
Oh yeah, me too. Like that was appointment TV.
Yeah. My brothers and I had, my one brother I think burned a CD of seasons 1 and 2 that I had. I watched it with some of my friends in college, but also after that, I was in it. See, but to me, they're not the same. That's a little edgier humor in How I Met Your Mother. It could be, yeah. Yeah. And this is a little bit softer, but it's like it's a comfort show for me. So, at any rate, I especially loved the Thanksgiving episodes. And last year I went and watched, I think, all the Thanksgiving episodes in a row. So we turned on to watch this year, and Steve goes, "Did you watch this without me? Because the bar's all the way across." Yeah, because it said it was watched already. And I was like, no. But, one other thing I want to say is that, and I guess maybe I can edit this in, that the kids in my high school, I don't know if this, maybe it didn't, because I was a freshman in high school when this came out, right? Yeah. So maybe you were just a little too older, but they would be like, "Oh, he's a Chandler. I'm a Rachel." Like, they would like... No, we didn't do that. I remember people doing that. Like, every sarcastic guy that I knew thought that he was like Chandler. I would have been a junior when this came out. Yeah. Which is partially probably maybe also the thing. Like, I was doing sports and I had after school activity. Right. Like, I had other things to do at night. That may be part of why I didn't watch it. Yeah. At any rate, the Thanksgiving episodes, like I said, were very popular. A lot of other shows have their like special must-see TV Christmas episodes, but this show decided not to do that. They had Christmas episodes, but they really wanted to do a lot of their big promotional, like, supersized episodes were at Thanksgiving. So, the first one that we watched was... the one with all the Thanksgivings. This is my favorite episode. Although the title was different on the streaming service we watched. Yeah, did they change it? On Max, they call it the one with all the Thanksgiving flashbacks. Okay, so this is 1998, season 5. And the setup that we have to kind of know going in, they're not doing like long form storytelling exactly, but because it's sitcom too. But enough people were watching it like week to week that they could kind of have a little bit of carryover. Yeah, there was some plot that was ongoing. Yeah, so season 4 ends with a cliffhanger where Ross says the wrong name at his wedding and says, "I take thee Rachel" instead of "I take thee Emily." That didn't go over well. Season 5 opens with the fact that because they've both had very bad days during Ross's wedding, Monica and Chandler started an affair.
and they have a secret affair going like through most of the season.
Right,
okay?
So none of the others know about it, just them.
Yeah, so that's kind of important to note, like, as we start up the episode.
This episode starts with all of them having food belly.
Yes.
They're all, like, they've all overeaten from their Thanksgiving meal, and they're laying around not wanting to move or do anything.
And I really like, this episode moved along really quickly, but they do try to take some moments in Friends to be, like, kind of realistic, where not too much is going on. And they're like, oh, they're all moaning. It was fun that it starts after the meal. So it's still Thanksgiving, but we don't get to see this year's Thanksgiving.
Yeah, we didn't see the Thanksgiving that they just had.
So
right?
I thought that was kind of fun. Phoebe tries to turn on the TV, but doesn't have enough energy to pick up the remote.
Yep.
And they start playing the thankful game. And what's Joey thankful for,
Joey
Steve?
is thankful for the beautiful fall weather they're having.
Because?
Especially because a brisk fall wind blew up the skirt of some girl on the street next to him, and he saw her underwear, and he's also thankful for thongs.
To which Steve pauses it and looks at me and goes, are thongs still a thing? I don't think so. I don't know.
I haven't been out in the dating pool recently to know that, so...
And they're uncomfortable looking. We have a break for the Pretender song and the dancing in the fountain. But what's interesting is a lot of this show holds up, I think. I don't want to get too much into but a lot of this show holds up. And then there are some things where I'm like, you can't, there's internet, but it's not the same as what we have now, right?
Yes.
You can't make an upskirt joke in a show today.
Right.
I don't think you can.
It'd be a little tougher, yeah.
It'd be a little bit more difficult.
So they all decide that what they'll do is they're going to talk about the worst Thanksgiving.
Because Ross says, what do I have to be thankful for? Should I be more thankful for my divorce or my eviction? This is the worst Thanksgiving ever.
And Phoebe said, oh, I didn't think you'd have anything to be thankful for.
Yes.
So that was a pretty good joke.
Yeah, that's a pretty good joke. So he says this is the worst Thanksgiving ever, to which Chandler is like, no, my friend. We have the worst Thanksgiving ever. And they're all like, because they've obviously heard this story before.
So they flash back to 1978.
Yes.
Where he finds out at Thanksgiving that his parents are getting divorced. And his mom is played by Morgan Fairchild.
Yeah. Yeah.
And his dad, you never see. He's from the back
because
of the
later
father.
on, his father is trans and a drag queen, and is played by Kathleen Turner.
Oh, okay.
So they didn't want to. I can see they didn't want to show. It's possible too they didn't get Kathleen Turner, right? But she says he'd rather be having sex with the houseboy than with me. And then this guy goes, "More turkey, Mr. Chandler." I think, so this is again where people would say this is problematic. I would say, watching it back, the joke isn't so much that his dad is gay. The joke is that his dad's been having an affair with the help, and his mom tells him just as the turkey's being served on Thanksgiving.
Yes.
If they were, your father's having an affair with the babysitter, want some apple pie, Chandler? It still would be funny, right? Yeah. So we have Chandler's worst Thanksgiving ever.
So Phoebe says, I can beat that. And then we go to a flashback of her in 1917 in World War I as a war nurse trying to take care of people, and a bomb drops and blows her arm off.
The first flashbacks she has is from the Civil War. The second one at the end of the episode is from the World War I. But yeah, and they're like, from this lifetime, Phoebe.
Yeah, they said from this lifetime, and she's like, oh, okay.
And I love this comment because Joey, they've said, too, that Joey wasn't always dumb, but Matt LeBlanc plays dumb really well.
Yeah.
But he also has a lot of heart. And he's like, I wish I had past memories. And Phoebe goes, you're brand new.
Yeah, this is your first life.
Your first time around. So then we go to Joey getting a turkey stuck on his head.
Yeah, and this is supposed to be
Monica's worst.
Rachel says, oh, I know your worst Thanksgiving. And Monica goes, no, we don't need to talk about that. And so they first bring up a flashback to 1992.
Yeah.
When Joey gets a turkey stuck on his head.
I really like, too, how they did this, because it's 98. This is only 6 years back. Mm-hmm. Joey's wearing a leather vest, close to what he wore in, like, season 1. Phoebe's got on, like, a hippie dress that, by this point, she's wearing kind of cooler clothes, like jeans and stuff. And Monica has a very bad haircut.
Yeah.
And Chandler has a goatee,
yep.
which I also found funny.
This joke actually was a bit of controversy because the writers of the show Mr. Bean claimed that this joke was stolen.
Oh.
Because Mr. Bean did a turkey on the head in 1992, which would have been 6 years before this. And it was a very similar gag. And so the writers from that show made kind of a big deal and were like, they stole that joke. But then Rowan Atkinson, who's the star of Mr. Bean, he's a pretty classy guy. And he came out and was like, listen, jokes are intended to be stolen. That's the purpose of humor.
Yeah, and a lot of times people come up with similar ideas. What I heard about this when I have not listened to the commentary in a while, but I do remember that in this episode, they went a number of prosthetic turkeys trying to figure out which would be best.
Yeah.
And they finally came up with one that had a flesh-colored mesh to match the flesh of the turkey so that he could breathe and see.
That makes sense.
Because there are some gags where he's pointed in the wrong direction, but if you can't see at all, you really don't know
that you're doing that. Yeah. You have to intentionally be in the wrong direction.
Right, exactly. So then we flash to my favorite scene. But first Chandler says, come on, reliving past pain and getting depressed is what Thanksgiving is all about.
So then we get Monica's
which I find hilarious.
Second really worst Thanksgiving.
Yes. And here we have the very controversial again, Fat Monica.
Yes.
I love Fat Monica because I am also a fat girl. And I will tell you, here's what happens. We see Monica in 87 and then she gets thin in 88.
Yeah.
What happens to her is very common, and I went through it myself, that people start paying a different type of attention to you and you're not used to that and you're very awkward and you don't kind of know how to navigate it.
Yeah.
And I find it Fat Monica is so much happier than Thin Monica. I just want to be like, Thin Monica, eat a piece of pie.
So it's the first Thanksgiving that Ross is at college.
Yep.
And he comes home and brings Chandler, who's his roommate.
And Rachel has her old nose.
Chandler has a flock of seagulls haircut.
Yep.
Rachel has her old nose, and Rachel's boyfriend has just broken up with her.
And Ross has like a perm and a mustache.
Yes.
And it is so 80s.
He looks very, it looks very Hall & Oates.
Yeah, it's supposed to be. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And so Monica keeps talking about how Rachel was going to give her flower to Chip. But then Chip broke up with her. Now he's with Nancy Branson, which is a wonderful name. And Rachel's like, high school boys are silly. I'm going to date a man. And then Ross goes, Judy, I can't find the grave.
Yeah, calling his mom and dad by their names so he can seem like he's older.
And I've seen people do that too. Like, they're trying so hard.
And he's trying to hit on her, and she's not interested at all.
Oh, she's like oblivious and annoyed. Yeah.
But Monica is very into Chandler.
Yes. And she goes, I'm Ross's little sister. And he's like, okay.
Yeah.
Which is not nice.
It's not nice. And then we find out that Chandler hates Thanksgiving foods because of his parents' divorce, right? So he hates Thanksgiving. So Monica says, well, I'll make you macaroni and cheese.
And he's like, this is awesome. You should be a chef. And she's like,
she goes, okay. And then she becomes a chef. And we find out, this is mind-blowing. We find out her whole personality has been molded. And
also it's kind of trying to show that the writers initially just set this up for them to just sleep together one time and then have kind of a fallout from that. And then they were like, Monica and Chandler are really like good together and balance each other out well. And they kind of became like the core couple of the show instead of Ross and Rachel.
They were initially supposed to have a fling and then Monica and Joey were supposed to end up together.
I don't like that.
But once they had the actors all together, the chemistry dictated it to go differently.
Steve, I shipped them so hard. I wanted them to be together so bad. And they had some hints in season 4 that was going to kind of happen. And I was like, oh, he did this for her, and then we're going to get together. I was like really on top of it. It was real. It's really sad how obsessed I got with the show.
So then of course, she overhears him calling her fat to Ross.
Yeah.
And it kind of just like breaks her, and she refuses to have dessert, and she runs upstairs.
Well, her mom says, finish off these pies. I don't have room in my fridge. And I want to say I've also known my parents are not like this, but I know many parents who do that kind of thing. Like they kind of sabotage their kids.
Yeah.
And not always intentionally. It's just like family patterns. But I really like that thing because as Chandler said, this is about Thanksgiving where you do have the best of your family and also the worst sometimes.
So then we jump back to present, and Chandler does not remember saying that.
No.
And is kind of, now, of course, this is where the underlying thing of them being in an affair happened, right? Because now he feels really bad because they're together now secretly. But and he, like,
Steve goes, nobody knows they're together. I go, no. He goes, he's touching her leg. And I'm like, yeah. You're just
He was, like, rubbing her knee and thigh. And I'm like, no one else sees this in the living room?
That's just what you do with your friends.
Maybe your friends.
You hold hands, you do kisses, and you rub it out. I'm just kidding. So then we have 1988. It's the year after Rachel says, this is the real story of Monica's worst Thanksgiving. And basically, Monica has gotten her thinner body.
Yeah, Monica spent the last year dropping weight, and now she's attractive and skinny, and Ross shows back up with Chandler again, and now they look like Miami Vice.
Yes. And the Miami Vice look is so perfect. One of them has on an all-white suit with a bright T-shirt underneath, and the other one, it's bright blue. Bright with pink and bright blue with yellow.
Yeah.
It's great. And I will say, too, fat Monica is also attractive, just not attractive to Chandler.
Right.
But the mom goes, honey, Ross is here, and Rachel, and the boy who hates Thanksgiving. That's how she remembers him. But they also talk about Carol. She plays for both teams.
Yes, Carol, who Ross is going to marry later,
lacrosse and golf.
Yeah, he goes, she plays lacrosse and golf, and I'm like, ooh, there it is. And he's like, yeah, she plays for both teams, and I'm just like, oh man.
Again, some jokes you couldn't have today, right?
Right.
But basically, Monica says, I just want to humiliate him. I want to get back at him. I want him to be naked and point and laugh at him.
Yeah.
And Rachel's like, men get naked when they think they're going to have sex. And this is where, for me, this is the best part of the show. Because this is how, like, girls who are in their teens very often don't really know, like, they're 18, right? Mm-hmm. So they have, like, kind of budding sexuality, but they don't know what to do with it yet.
Yeah.
And they're like, how do we flirt? I don't know. Especially somebody who was heavy and she didn't date all of high school.
Yep.
So she's like, I'm not going to give him my flower, which is hilarious.
Yeah.
But then they're like, oh, let's pretend that this is sexy. Let's pretend that this is...
And she's pretending and doing a terrible job at flirting with him, and he's like, are you okay? And then she drops a knife, and it goes into his foot. It cuts his toe off. This is also like when girls wear makeup for the first time, and it's like too much, right? So he goes to the hospital. They keep putting him toe first through the doors, which is a good little thing. And they can't reattach it because they accidentally brought a carrot. Yeah. Then it flashes back to the present, and Chandler's like, you cut my toe off to get back because I called you fat?
Yeah.
And he's pretty angry about it, and he gets up and leaves the apartment.
To which I think this is I get that it's for comedy. It's an overreaction. It's 10 years ago. It's part of your who cares?
Yeah.
Why do you care? This is the woman that you're falling in love with. Like, why do you care? But then we have Monica to cheer him up. What does she do, Steve?
She walks into the other apartment with the turkey on her head.
Yes.
Just like Joey had.
Yeah.
And then she puts, like, glasses on it, and then she puts a hat, and then she starts doing a funny dance, and he starts laughing, and he says, oh, I love you.
Yeah.
And then they both stopped because apparently he had not said that before.
Yeah.
So that was the first time, and she has a turkey on her head.
Steve, now this is also, we're recording this on our anniversary.
We are.
And this reminded me of
60 years.
No. This reminded me of the first time that I told you I loved you, to which you said nothing and said, all right, time to get some groceries.
I don't recall that happening.
Because
I didn't hear you.
If you don't know, Steve can't hear out of one of his ears, and I thought I was on the correct side, but I wasn't. He didn't know that I
So Megan said something, and I did not hear it whatsoever. And so to her, I'm just ignoring it and going on with the conversation.
And then I got kind of mad, and he's like, why are you mad? I was like, I just told you I love you for the first time. You're like, cool, let's go get groceries. And you were like, oh, no, I love you too. I didn't hear you. I can't hear out of here. Which is just kind of funny to me. Oh, the other thing I want to say about this scene before we go on to the next episode is I have really not watched this show in quite a while. We just haven't had time. We've been watching other things. And probably a couple, well, other than last year for Thanksgiving. They really did a lot to distinguish the girls' apartment from the guys' apartment. That the girls' apartment is very colorful, unlike most sitcoms at the time. There's purples and teals, and there's a lot of layers of different pictures and fabrics and like throw pillows and, things like that. It's very warm, and it looks like a girl's apartment.
Yeah.
It looks a lot like my apartment when I, was renting. Then you go to the guy's apartment. It's just like stark white. There's just boxes in places. There's just a TV and a couch and a dry erase board and a duck walking around, which I thought was kind of neat visually. So that's basically the episode ends with Joey being scared of Monica's turkey on the head.
Yeah.
And he runs off, and the two of them are like, okay, now it's almost a little bit of a cliffhanger because they've said I love you, but we don't know what's going to happen next. Right. So and then we skip ahead 4 years.
The next episode was from season 8.
2001.
It was called The One with the Rumor.
Yes.
Season 8 is the highest rated season of Friends.
I find that really surprising.
Season 6 and 7 had dropped in rating.
Interesting.
And so 8 bounced back. And it was rated very well in season 8. So knowing that, we open up with a few different changes. And again, I'm not somebody who watched all of the episodes. So we open up with Rachel being pregnant.
So, yeah, again, some cliffhanger stuff. Basically what happened is that Chandler and Monica got married. During the preparations for their wedding, Rachel and Ross got together and slept together, which resulted in her being pregnant. So season 7 ends with Monica's and Chandler's wedding and Rachel finding out that she's having a baby.
Gotcha. And Ross already has a child.
Yes, with Carol, with his ex-wife. So that is also, again, a little bit important. Oh, also you have to know, we're in 2001. That means that Brad Pitt and Jennifer Aniston are married.
Okay, yes.
So we're in, I think, the middle of them being married.
Okay.
It's definitely before Angelina Jolie steps into the picture, right? So, so Rachel is pregnant and Phoebe's bringing her some maternity clothes.
Yep. And we find out that Monica comes in and mentions to them that she has invited Will from high school. So this kid that she was in band with in high school that knew her and Ross, and that he was heavy like she was, and he's dropped weight as well, and she ran into him, so she invited him. And of course, Rachel's like, Will? And she's like, I don't remember him. And she's like, oh yeah, that's such and such. And she's like, no, I just can't place him.
Yeah, she doesn't remember him at all. As quite frankly, so this is 2001. They graduated high school, it seems, in like 88 or 87.
Yeah, probably 88, the girls, yeah.
Yeah, by that point, you're right. I mean, you're now they're probably almost 30. Like, you just don't remember everybody that you went to high school with.
Joey makes the statement that he can eat a whole turkey if needed. Because Monica says there's a number of people that don't really eat turkey this year, so I wasn't going to make one. And Joey says, no, there has to be turkey, and I will eat the whole thing if I have to.
And I like this line that he has. He goes, Thanksgiving with no turkey is like 4th of July with no apple pie, or Friday with no 2 pizzas. Which is a good line. Have the introduction again with the song. And then we have Chandler watching football, which I thought was strange because it's a running thing that Chandler's not like a traditional masculine manly.
Yeah, he's not really into football.
He's not
sports,
a jock.
things like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so Monica asks Phoebe to fold the napkins. Like swans, we're not at a barn dance.
Yeah, she says, can you help? Because Chandler's really into the football game and I don't want to bother him.
Yeah. Yeah. And then he tells Phoebe he's just pretending so he doesn't have to help.
Yeah, she says, who's winning? And he goes, I have no idea. I'm just pretending to watch the game.
My favorite bit is he goes, ah, and she goes, is your team winning, honey? He goes, yeah, Anderson just scored again. Then he looks up at Phoebe. He goes, there's no Anderson.
Yeah.
So Phoebe pretends like she likes Green Bay, and then she's pretending to watch the thing with Jim.
Yeah, so she gets in on the scam. She goes, that's brilliant.
This is, again, we had a little bit of a different setup last time because of the flashbacks, but this is pretty typical of Friends to have an A story and a B story, and sometimes a C story.
Right.
So the A story here is the guy coming to dinner who's Ross's friend, and that he did not like Rachel, right? That's kind of the A story.
Mm-hmm.
The B story is the football. The C story is Joey and the turkey.
Right.
Right. So we have 3 different storylines, and we're kind of cutting between them, even though for the most part in this episode, we're all in one location.
Yes. So Will arrives.
Hard to do. Yeah,
and Will is Brad Pitt.
And there are screams, because we didn't talk about this, but this is filmed live in front of a studio audience, which kind of stopped after this show, and there were 1 or 2 others. This and Roseanne kind of were like the last shows to do live in front of a studio audience. The studio audience goes nuts. Okay. Brad Pitt and Jennifer Aniston were married from 2000 to 2005.
Right. So they've just been married about a year.
About a year. And they go, oh, Will, you look so great. And I'm going to say, I don't find Brad Pitt attractive. But he looks more attractive when he was with Jennifer Aniston. Because if you don't know, Steve, there's a big thing about how Brad Pitt is a chameleon and he looks like whatever girl he's dating.
Okay. And
he went through a phase where he was like dating Juliette Lewis for a while. And he kind of like didn't wash his hair all the time and had like a grunge kind of look.
I remember that.
Then he dated Gwyneth Paltrow and they had the same haircut.
Yeah.
Then he dated Jennifer Aniston and they both got kind of the same blonde highlights. And he looks like the boy next door here, which is like right to match her girl next door.
It's hilarious what they've done here, because then we also find out when they mention Rachel's coming that Will's not crazy about Rachel.
Oh, no, he doesn't like her.
So you have the 2 of them that the audience and everyone, of course, love, right, and are shipping, and they're playing people that hate one another.
Right. So I have a quick story here, and that is my brother and I took a trip together to California on vacation around this time. And it's a long story about how that happened. But at any rate, we go on this Hollywood tour of like the stars' homes, and it's in this little bus. And when the bus driver there goes, okay, we're going to go past Jennifer Aniston and Brad Pitt's house. And we're like, oh, wow, that's amazing. She goes up to the house. Their house is in like a cul-de-sac, but the bus is too big to kind of like get around. So the bus driver pulls in their driveway, and as it's backing out, the bus is like, beep, beep, beep. And the bus driver, also tour guide, goes, they hate this. They've called in a number of times, but they're the stars of our tour, and just backs up. And then I'm bad for them. The other thing is, when we went on the studio tour lot of Universal Studios, we saw Matt LeBlanc heading out to tape Friends.
Oh, interesting.
And we ended up going to see the Drew Carey show because nobody could get tickets to Friends. But we got tickets for Drew Carey. But yeah, so we saw Matt LeBlanc in person, and we saw Jennifer Aniston in Brad Pitt's house. I'm not a huge fan of stunt casting like this, but it works here. And it's supposed to be a special Thanksgiving episode. So again, you suspend your disbelief.
Yeah. Right. So they all come in and meet Will.
Yeah.
And Will mentions not only is he not happy about this, but he hated Rachel in high school.
Yes.
And he stares her down from across the room.
They also make a big point of the fact that he's lost a lot of weight and finally gotten in shape.
Yes.
And he goes, I'm a commodities broker. It's not fun, but I'm thin and I'm rich.
Yeah.
Like, okay. He also brings in something that he says, no fat, no sugar, no dairy, no taste really. Just throw it away.
Yeah.
But he stares at her from across the room. But what does she say, Steve?
She goes, he's got like that smoldering look to him. And then she goes, I think he's mouthing something to me.
Yes.
And it shows him and he's going, I hate you.
Yeah. And he just detests her. It's interesting, too, that they never fully explain what she did to him.
No, but it goes into dinner, and dinner is terrible.
Oh, yeah.
Because he has a comment about her, based on everything.
And also, they haven't mentioned that she's pregnant, but she goes, let's just move the birds. Like, it's too much. Now, Monica, before Will came in, said that Rachel, like, some smells and some foods are kind of making her nauseous because she's pregnant.
Because she's pregnant, right?
But he goes, typical.
Yeah.
Typical Princess Rachel Green. And he fake flips his hair, and it's so funny. It's such great timing there.
And so this kind of opens up basically into, like, it basically opens up into discussion where we find out that Ross and Will ran the I Hate Rachel Green Club.
And the only other member was an exchange student who may or may not have known
from Thailand. Yes. And they're like, why do you hate Rachel so much? And he's like, no, it's just, she was terrible. And he's like, kind of, like you said, dancing around it.
Yeah.
And Phoebe at one point just goes, come on, Will, take your shirt off and tell us why you hate her.
Yeah.
And you're like, what?
And then we find out that, also in the background of this, Joey's trying to eat a 19-pound turkey. Right?
Yeah, Joey's trying to eat this huge turkey.
And in a D storyline, Phoebe has a big crush on Will, basically. She just thinks he's very good looking. So then we find out what the rumor is. And he goes, you dated her? To Ross. She goes, yeah. Ross, you and I dated for 2 years and you never told me you were the part of, and then Will goes, co-founder.
Yeah.
And she goes, co-founder of the I Hate Rachel Green fan club. And he says, it's just because I loved you so much. I had a huge crush on you. And if you think about it, the I Hate Rachel club was really like the I Love Rachel club. And Will stands up and goes, no, it wasn't.
So they spread a rumor about Rachel around high school that she was a hermaphrodite.
Yeah, that she had both male and female parts. And again, I don't think that you can have this joke today unless it's more serious and we actually talk about bullying. Right? But they basically, she goes, what was that? Why, like, this guy only wanted to stay, like, above the belt and, like, fool around, and this guy wouldn't go out with me? And Monica goes, you guys started that rumor? And she's like, you heard it? And then Chandler says,
I heard it in my school. You were the hermaphrodite cheerleader from Long Island?
Yes, which is great. I really liked, because that kind of sells the joke that, like, this really was a huge rumor that she spread. So she confronts Ross, and she goes, I can't believe that you spread this rumor about me. And he goes, you did the same for...
No, she says, I never did anything like that about you. And Monica goes, that's not true.
Yeah. So Monica says that she spread a rumor about Ross, that he made out with Mrs. Hultman, the 50-year-old librarian, to which Ross says...
How do you know about that?
Which I love, because it subverts expectations.
Yeah.
Because you think, okay, they made up this silly thing, and basically they said, and this is, I'm quoting, they said she had a teeny weenie.
Right.
But you expect that he'll be like, why would you tell people that I did that? But no.
No, she actually saw him making out with the librarian.
This is my favorite part of this episode. He goes into a long explanation of She needed help with her word jumble. And so I went over, and Anita was a very gentle and tender person. May she rest in peace.
He starts off like, I went into the library one afternoon and it was just the two of us.
Yes.
And it's like it's from Penthouse Forum.
Yeah. It's like he's telling his story. Now, you don't know whether or not they went all the way, but at least they made out. But Anita was gentle. May she rest in peace. Yeah. It's really, oh my God. And then they go, didn't she use a cane?
It was damn.
Oh my gosh. And it's so funny. So Monica is basically trying to make peace between them. And she says, look, Rachel, you were still the most popular girl in school. This rumor didn't affect you. And some girls, meaning herself.
Yeah.
One girl admired you so much, she put a little Tootsie Roll down her pants. She goes, and Ross, Rachel put you on the map. Nobody even knew who you were, right? And now you have more important things to think about. And Ross goes, that's true. Now we're grown up. We've put the past behind us. We are having a baby together.
And Will goes, what? Wait a second. Hold on.
Because nobody's mentioned this. All of
and he goes, wait a second. You got her pregnant? And he's like, yeah. And he goes, are you getting married? And Ross goes, no. And he goes, so you got her pregnant and you're not going to marry her. Oh, right. And he goes for high five.
Yeah. And nobody will
this was the ultimate revenge, he thinks.
Nobody will high five him. So Phoebe goes, okay. And instead of high fiving him, she gives him a hug.
Like a long-lasting hug.
What's hilarious is that people would always ask, are the friends really friends? They did hang out in real life. So this is basically like her friend's husband.
Right.
She has to pretend. And you can see, I feel like you can see Lisa Kudrow in that moment kind of be like, I have to do this, but it's a little weird, right? How that segment ends, and then the tag is Joey
coming in with maternity pants on to eat the turkey so it can stretch.
Yeah, and he finishes off the turkey and then goes for that pumpkin pie.
Yeah.
So we have what I liked about this too. I like the idea that Thanksgiving is a time usually, like in the first episode, where you're with family, right? Or sometimes you have a Friendsgiving and it's with your friends. But sometimes you do, like I don't have many friends that I still see in person from high school, but my brother does. And like at Thanksgiving and Christmas, if he goes home, like he'll stop and see them and, you know, they'll do stuff. So I kind of like that. I like that, like, sometimes it's a little toxic at Thanksgiving with your family. They make fun of your weight. Or sometimes you have some secrets come out of Thanksgiving because everybody's there, right? So they have this, like, it's a humorous, over the top, obviously, because it's TV, but it's a humorous depiction of, like, some of the stuff that goes on at Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And the food's kind of the center of it. And you do get to see, like, these and these big, like, kind of moments, you know?
Yeah.
And a little bit of time to be thankful for the autumn breeze. So, how was it received at the time, Steve? Because we remember this a little differently.
Initially, there was mixed reviews.
Really?
When it first came out. Yeah, some people liked it. A number of critics thought it was average or okay. One critic actually even said that it's just the newest Seinfeld wannabe and probably won't last long.
Interesting.
But with that in mind, it did start off pretty good. As I mentioned, it started in 2 different time slots the first season, but it was 8th in the rankings, which is not bad.
Okay.
Season 2, it went to 3rd in the rankings.
Well, 8th even is good. I mean, again, like I said, Cheers came out, it was like 97th. So 8th is overall, it was probably one of the number ones for NBC.
And then it played around 4th, 3rd, 2nd for the next number of years, right? Mm-hmm. Until season 6 and 7, it dropped to 5th, which was its lowest ranking since the first season.
Okay.
But then season 8, which I told you was its highest ranking. Right. And it's also, a lot of the critics say it was the best season writing-wise.
Okay.
There was some really strong storylines in season 8.
Yeah.
Right? It went to number 1.
Okay.
In season 8. Season 9, it was number 2, and then in its last season, it dropped to 4.
Which makes sense.
Which most shows do in their last season, right? So as far as when we look at it long term, though, right? Yes.
Can I say, too, I think those ratings to me kind of reflect when I rewatch this show, I have a couple of times just skipped right to season 4. I think seasons 1 and 2, especially for me, are very 90s. And they're a little bit slower and they take more time for fun stuff like, oh, let's play around and watch the friends watching TV.
Yes.
But the episodes that we saw by that point, by like season 5, 6, 7, 8, they are, they really are moving along quickly.
Yes.
Like the storylines, there is no drag because they're trying to get so much story in there. So
you had mentioned earlier, too, just the fact that how they all kind of work together as a team, things like that. They had all decided to maintain the ensemble format, that the main cast would all be entered for the same acting categories for awards.
Okay.
So seasons 1 through 7, they were all entered in Best Supporting Actor. Because it's an ensemble. Starting in season 8, they all entered for Best Lead Actor.
Okay.
Because they felt that they still were able to handle that. All in all, the series was nominated for 62 Primetime Emmys.
Wow.
And it won 6.
Okay.
But again, that's a lot. You're up against a lot of competition.
It's also though you're splitting. This has happened with a number of movies as well. Like you have 2 great supporting actors. They're both in the same movie. They split the vote. If you have Courtney Cox against Jennifer Aniston against Lisa Kudrow, like because they're playing off of each other, who do you vote for? You know?
Yeah.
Do you know one time Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen were up for Best Actress in their sitcom? I don't think it was for the Emmys, but it might have been like People's Choice or something. And like one of them won it.
Right,
and the
like,
other
how?
one, they were both like, I don't get how this would even work because...
So Jennifer Aniston and Lisa Kudrow are the only ones of the cast to win.
Okay.
The 2, Jennifer Aniston and Lisa Kudrow won Emmys.
Okay.
For Best Supporting or Best Lead Actor. Courtney Cox is the only actor not to be nominated.
Aw.
So,
That's
which is
sad.
interesting. The series won a Primetime Emmy for Outstanding Comedy Series in 2002, which would have been at the end of the 8th season, which we just said was their strong season.
Yeah.
Right? But they were nominated 5 other years.
They probably lost to things like Frasier, which I just can't stand.
They also won an American Comedy Award. They won a Golden Globe. They won 3 Logie Awards and 6 People's Choice Awards.
And they won Megan's Heart.
Yes. So, again, we see where the ratings were. We see that they ended up having a very strong showing as far as reception, as far as awards. Even their ratings, the lowest they were ever rated was 8th, which is really high still.
Right. Yeah, they were always in the top 10.
Yep. And then, of course, they did go into syndication, and then they became available on Netflix as well. So, I mean, you can pretty much see Friends all over the place.
Well, and now they're on Max. Now they're on Max. Yep. The thing is that this is a show I have found that there are younger millennials and Gen Zers who still love this show. And it's interesting to me that some of the shows that might have won instead of Friends for like best comedy are things that I don't really like, but are things like Frasier or Mad About You or like whatever.
Right.
That for whatever reason, I don't know. There are some people who like Frasier. Mad About You was like one of those forgotten TV shows. Other things that were at the time. Caroline in the City, nobody hardly remembers that show. The show that Brooke Shields was in, News Radio, which like I liked at the time, but again, it just they didn't have the legs that this show had. Where many people saw it 10 years later, or 20, and still watched the whole thing and became fans. Which is it's just interesting to me.
Warner Brothers owns Friends.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, which is why it's on Max now, because Max is HBO and Warner Brothers. And because of syndication revenue, Friends still generates $1 billion a year for Warner Brothers.
That sounds about right. Yeah, and that's that's one of the reasons they moved it to Max off of Netflix. Same thing with The Office. That's another show that ended like 10 years ago and people don't even realize it because it's been, so popular in syndication and streaming. So that's how the critics feel about it. How did we feel about it watching it back many years later?
I mean, it probably had a little bit more legs with me now. I'm older than I would have been at the time it was out. I appreciate a little bit more the genre that it's in now at my age. It's still not my favorite show ever. I'm going to say that, but it's not the worst. We've seen worse on this in this podcast. I'm going to say I'm going to give it a 7.
Okay. The thing is, I will say this too. We didn't watch, there's an episode, I think either from season 1 or 2, where the power goes out and Chandler is stuck in a ATM booth with a model and just chewing gum and trying to think of how to ask her out. That episode that's very slow. We watched, the best episodes of this show. Right. Some of the best, or some of the most memorable. I will say that at least. To me, this is a 10. This is one of my favorites. Are there things that are going to show up on a BuzzFeed list as being problematic? Sure.
Everything's going to go now.
But you're looking at that in 2023, or if you're listening to this next year, 2024, you're looking at that with goggles on of things from 10 years ago, right? So I think that I don't think that you can kind of judge that part of it outside of a few of those jokes and a few references and the fact that, as people have pointed out, it isn't that diverse. The clothing, things like that, that's a little bit dated. But I think the storylines, they could have had be set when they go back home and Chandler and Ross come home for Thanksgiving. They could have had that in 1998, if it were a show today. Right. And they're dressed with low, the girls are in those super low-rise jeans or something and the butterfly clips, right? And have it still be kind of silly. So, yeah, for me, this definitely holds up. It's a fun show, especially around this time of year. And it makes me a little bit nostalgic for that time in my life. So, yeah, 10 out of 10 for me.
So, altogether.
Yeah!
8.5 pumpkin pies.
I'm glad you did the math. 8.5 pumpkin pies, Steve, that's not bad.
It's not bad.
I thought you would give Friends a lot lower of a score, so I'm pretty pleased with that. Coming up, we have had now our TV show. We are going to do next a Thanksgiving special. So we have Charlie Brown Thanksgiving.
Yep.
We have a different Charlie Brown Thanksgiving that is, it's America Charlie Brown, the Mayflower. I guess it's America Charlie Brown was a series about different points of American history.
Okay.
And Mouse on the Mayflower, also a Rankin Bass animated special. And Beethoven, which apparently is a Thanksgiving movie, and I don't know if I've ever seen it, or if I have, not since it came out. So what is Steve willing to watch?
I'm going to go with It's America Charlie Brown, the Mayflower.
Okay. If we can find it.
Yep.
We're going to watch It's America Charlie Brown, the Mayflower, and we're also going to have a special bonus Thanksgiving episode. My mom did Mother's Day, not this year, but last year.
Yep.
And she loves planes, trains, and automobiles, and that is a Thanksgiving movie.
So is this another show where Steve's not involved?
Right. Well, Steve has a busier schedule than Megan.
That is true.
So Megan has time to watch Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, and Steve doesn't.
But also, if you haven't noticed, recently on our YouTube channel, I've been putting some mini reviews of modern shows that impact or are connected to our childhood.
Yeah, and we call those Steve's rants, even though it's
I didn't name it that. You did, but yes.
It's not like you rant the whole time.
Right.
You do. And also, we have some fun stuff on our Instagram. We're putting up some reels, clips of the shows we talk about, and also sometimes of the snacks when we can find ads of them. So that's at Stop Ruining My Childhood. And links to listen, as well as links to our YouTube videos, can be found on our website, stopruiningmychildhood.com. You can also find us over at 5050 Press and Media. That's 5050 pressandmedia.com. So that's it for us. Happy Thanksgiving. I'll say that a couple more times this month, but
yeah, it's a whole month-long Thanksgiving.
It's a whole month-long Thanksgiving. Don't get too fat.
That's right.
Don't eat too many pumpkin pies. My name is Megan.
And I'm Steve.
Have a great week, everybody. Thanks.
Give me a break, give me a break. Break me off a piece of that applesauce. Chrysler car, football cream, lumber tart, Snickers bar. Break
Andy!
Claude Van Damme, hair for men, poison gas, ultra sweet. Fancy feast! Break me off a piece of that fancy feast. It's a cat food. Nailed it.
Nope.